Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another episode of the strategy series. On Friday, we talked about how to counter SS4 Gogeta, and I got a lot of comments asking about how to counter Red Sin Shenron, because when you look at this format, at least for the first couple weeks, either SS4 Gogeta or Red Sin are the two most highly rep decks, and it's not even really close. Those are the two most popular decks in any room. So we'll talk about how to counter Red Sin today. If you guys want to see how to counter SS4 Gogeta, I will link that down in the description. But today, we're talking about Sin. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And if you guys want to help support the channel, there are tons of ways to do so down in the description. But since we're talking about competitive stuff in Dragon Ball Super, if you want to check out the Patreon, you can read the articles that I have posted there. You can also inquire about coaching if that's something you're interested in. I actually recently posted my red-yellow Sin build, which I personally think is the best build of Sin. So maybe you want to check that out if you want to see more of how the deck plays. But anyways, let's talk about how to counter Red Sin. Alright, I'm going to do this a little differently than I've done other strategy series videos, and I'm basically going to go slide by slide talking about what a facet of the deck does and how we're going to go about countering it. So we have the Z leader, Omega Shenron. Now this is arguably the strongest Z leader in the game. I know Gogeta 100k, but this is a Z leader that is going to be on the board the majority of the game, and it just generates so much value between being a 20k double striker, clearing unisons, the -6 or the remove 6 Dragon Balls rather to play a free Shadow Dragon. That's very, very powerful. And with this leader, you get two other really powerful cards. You get Dragon Thunder just for being a Shadow Dragon leader, but you get Rage Shenron for being the Z leader, which is kind of crazy because it's a blocker negate, and we all know how powerful blocker negates are. That doesn't require you to take life, and of course on top of this card you can play any number of testing the ops that you want to play. So when it comes to the Z leader in general, you have to read the Z Awaken when your life's at 3 or less and your opponent has 3 or more energy. That's a really key thing there, because Red Sin Shenron does not have very good control over its own life total. If you guys saw last week's top 8 Sin profile with Andrew, you saw that he actually sideboarded Intensifying Power Trunks because of this issue. Red Sin does not have good control over its life. So basically, they're kind of at your own mercy, you being the opponent. They're at your mercy of when they're able to actually Z Awaken. And also note too, their Unawakened leader says they cannot include non-red battle cards in their deck. So they can't play Vegeta Surmounting the Impossible. They can't even play that card out of the Z deck to help bring their life total down. Their only real method of doing that is testing the opposition if you're not attacking their leader. And we all know that card's only live at 5 or less life. So if you want to be really, really safe, you can keep Sin Shenron at 5 life until you stabilize, because that's going to require them to have 2 copies of testing the opposition in order to get themselves Z Awakened. If you want to be even safer, you could of course leave them at 6, but once you're kind of ready to go in and start doing damage, 6 to 0 is a lot harder than 5 to 0. But again, it all really depends on the type of deck you're playing. Maybe you're playing a super elongated, kind of control deck, and you want to keep them at 6 life. You can definitely do that. They're not going to be able to Z Awaken until you basically tell them when they're allowed to do that. So no matter what you're playing, another aggro deck, a mid-range deck, a control deck, keep a very keen eye on their life total, and you can basically dictate to them when they're allowed to Z Awaken. Anyways, as far as Dragon Thunder goes, again, when they get to their Z leader, they'll be a 25k leader defensively if they want to be. So again, you want to just stall them from getting to their Z leader. And then Rage Shenron, it's always really helpful to have an answer to blocker negates, whether that's the new free Dark Broly Overrealm or something just to KO the token, or in this case the Rage Shenron. It's always really good to have immediate removal answers to any form of blocker negates. Next, let's talk about Rush Tech SSB Vegeta. Obviously, Red has the best pool of Z battle cards in the game. Rush Tag SSB Vegeta is a particularly interesting one in Red Sin because their Dragon Balls, while you cannot use the cracked Dragon Balls to pay the 2 Z energy for Vegeta, you can use those cracked Dragon Balls to satisfy the activate main, having 4 or more Z energy. So as long as Sin gets 2 other cards into Z energy, they can play Rush Tech Vegeta as early as turn 2. We talked about some answers to this in the Gogeta video, but I'll kind of just go over them again here. We have Release from Evil for yellow, which is basically going to lock the Rush Tech down, and Time Magic is also a good example of this, basically preventing it from untapping, so they're getting no value off that activate main. I guess you could say Time Magic's a little bit better because it actually negates the attack and prevents untapping, but Release from Evil is just really good against a lot of other things, and you're probably already playing it in your list, and it's also just good against Gogeta, so there's that. Riot Javelin, talked about it as well with the Gogeta video. It is kind of costly at 2 energy, but this card is a lot more interesting now than it's ever been, because whether or not a Z battle card has barrier doesn't matter with Riot Javelin, and normally bouncing back to the opponent's hand is not that great, but with Z battle cards, they don't go back to any area. They just get removed from the game when they would leave the battle area. So this is actually a really good 2 energy counter to any various Z battle cards. Now, of course, again, 2 energy, a little bit expensive. You might only want to use this in like Gamma or SS3 or some other blue deck, maybe like a ramping blue deck that you are comfortable with the amount of energy that you're generating. There are other answers to rush attack, but the red player can play around them. I'll just mention them really quick. So one example is Realm of the Gods, Beerus Destroys. If they attack with rush attack Vegeta before proccing the activate main, you could catch them with a Realm of the Gods Beerus, because you can just get rid of the rush attack SSB on that swing because it does not have barrier yet. There are some other answers as well, but I mean, I think a good red player is going to know when they have to preemptively shotgun the activate main, and in those cases, those types of answers are not going to be that great. Dormant Potential is another example, but again, against a green deck, if you're going in with rush attack, you're probably going to shotgun the activate main to give it the barrier if you know there's an option your opponent has that can kill it early. But anyways, good tech here for the Z deck. All right, now of course we got to talk about Omega Shenron Unfeeling Retribution. This is the boss monster of the deck. They can start dropping it as early as turn 3. They can even drop a free copy of this whenever they decide to use the activate main on their Z leader. So this thing comes down and generates a lot of pressure. It's Triple Striker. They have the ability to give it barrier and critical via Oceanus and Haze respectively. So you got to be very careful about that. Haze does not have an energy restriction, so they can start critting you as early as they want to on various Shadow Dragon battle cards. Oceanus, though, you as the opponent have to have 3 or more energy, so definitely take note of that, especially if you're going second. They're not going to be able to give this thing barrier until their turn 4 typically, so that's pretty good there. But, I mean, if you have cheap barrier removal, it can be very, very good against this card. For different colors, you're going to be paying different amounts of energy for barrier removal, so you're going to have to kind of consult your own color pool with that type of thing. But as far as, like, taking these ginormous crits go, if you're taking a triple strike crit, odds are you're not winning that game. It's going to be really, really hard to come back from that advantage deficit. So one thing that I just have really started to adopt in a lot of decks that maybe weren't playing them before are just simple hard negates. Like we talked about Time Magic for the Z deck. Use a Time Magic against this, man. It doesn't matter, it doesn't restand. Just use any hard negate you can that prevents a card like this, or even the Dread Destroyer early on in the game, from hitting your life for these huge critical numbers. If you guys saw my Gamma deck profile from a few weeks ago, my kind of Zenkai updated Gamma deck profile, I mentioned that I had to add more hard negates to the deck because this matchup was particularly frustrating when they would just drop this guy or Dread Destroyer and I wouldn't have a way to stop the combat from happening. Basically, decks that used to be able to combo out of pretty decent sized battle cards, Gamma even being one of them with copies of Realm of the Gods Beerus or Infernal Villainy Cell, these battle cards have gotten really, really large to where you don't really want to be in the combo step anymore. You want to just be negating attacks and getting value that way. So I added some just singleton negates to Gamma. That's something you're going to want to really, take into account with this matchup. Because yes, this battle card is insanely powerful, but it's not SS4 Gogeta 8-drop. It actually can be negated, so you want to make sure you're negating those attacks. But of course, we have other options that also apply to the SS4 Gogeta matchup. So if you're playing any of these cards, you have dual purpose there. We have Dirty Burst, classic blue answer to any big boss monster. Unison of Fury, I think, is a little bit harder to play in certain decks, especially because Sin is really, really good at killing Unisons. So this might not be the best answer, but if you're already playing 2-cost Unisons in your deck, maybe you're playing like Bardock's Crew or something, this kind of just fits naturally, and you might still just be playing it for the Gogeta matchup. So it does get some dual purpose there, and as long as you resolve the -1, 1 or 2 turns, it's probably okay that they kill this thing. And then Shin, if you're going second, you prevent them from attacking you with that 8-drop Omega. It also prevents them from attacking you with potentially 2 Omegas if they're on their Z Awaken and they want to pay 2 for one of them and play another one for free, so that's not bad. And then of course, you're up against an aggro deck, so any of your various floodgates are going to do particularly well. Definitely extra cards over battle cards though, because red has a lot of really good answers to the battle card floodgates, whether they're 15k or less or even greater power than that. Red can play Denial of Hope, red can play Omen of Awakening, so you want to be pretty mindful of that. I will say the mono red variants of Sin lose to the extra card floodgates particularly hard, and I'm more so speaking about like Violent Rays and Flying Nimbus, where they are very reliant on battle card attacks, so limiting those can be very, very advantageous. I mean, Violent Rays in the red mirror against Sin it's really, really rough for Sin, I'll be honest with you. But that's why I think that red yellow is one of the better variants of Sin, because you can actually counter things like this with Almighty Resistance. Dormant Potential, I mean, yes, it's a very hard floodgate, like it's very limiting on your opponent, but the problem with Dormant is when your opponent's first attack of a turn is a huge 30k triple striker, Dormant is not really all that great because you got to still deal with that 30k attack. So Hopefully you have a blocker to back that up, right? Hopefully you're not just like letting that attack go directly to your life, or you have all your Paragus super combos. I don't know, but yeah, regardless, you want to have your slew of extra card floodgates. But anyways, guys, that's what I got for you in today's video. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments. I will gladly answer them and help you figure out the Sin matchup. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.